Chapter 6. His hand slid under her dress, his touch leaving goosebumps in its wake. He lifted her leg to his hip, his tongue caressing hers, his fingers sliding over her panties and beneath them. She moaned into his mouth. Has anyone else touched you since I was gone? He demanded. And she wasn't going to lie. If you mean did I try to replace you, you bet I did. And don't tell me you didn't do the same. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes blazing yellow. Who? None of your business. He ripped away her panties and pressed his fingers along the slick sensitive flesh. You are my business. Then act like it, sure. She'd barely gotten the words out her mouth before she was facing the wall. Her hands pressed to the surface, and the skirt to her dress was being pulled upward over her body and her head. Her bra was next and she could barely breathe when he pressed into her, framing her with hard muscle, his hands all over her, exploring, teasing her. I want to see your face when I enter you, he told her. A silent gasp escaped her and she moaned, her lashes lowering. His hand went to her face. Look at me. Somehow Carmen did as he demanded. Who do you belong to? He asked. I told you, damn it. Fucking me isn't going to make me yours. She reached up and tore the tie from his hair, letting the waves of raven hair streaked with red fall wildly around his shoulders. It just makes me wish I was. Sure stared at her, his eyes glistening green and yellow. Do you want to be mine, Carmen? Her chest tightened and she fought the urge to look at her palm where the mating mark should now be, and seek the proof they were mates, since the day I met you, but not like this. Not in the heat of a moment that sticks you with me forever when 5 years proves that isn't what you wanted. She forced her gaze to her hand, looking for the mark. Slowly he eased her up to look for the half-shaped crescent moon of the mating mark and then froze, unable to breathe. It wasn't there. They weren't mates. How could that be? Let me go, she said, pain and confusion exploding inside her as she shoved at his chest. Let me go. He was still inside her. She wanted free. She wanted space. Let go. Carmen, wait dash. Let go. He let her legs slip to the floor and she could feel the damp proof of his release slick between her thighs. A taunt that screamed that they had never been mates, that this was just sex and always had been. Carmen sunk down the wall to the floor, facing the truth of why staying away 5 years had been so easy for him. He was in front of her in an instant. Listen to me, he said, pressing his shirt between her legs and his hand on her face. She was on the floor, naked, his shirt as her towel. How disgraced did she have to get? Carmen, we're mates. I have no mark. We aren't mates, and so now I know why you forgot me so easily. Baby, I have never forgotten you. I have ached for you every second of every day. I don't want you to have to choose between me and your father. His lips thinned and he held up his palm and showed her a strange circle design etched. It's temporary Benedanti magic meant to stop mating. Her eyes went wide and her chest exploded with pain. What? What does that even mean? I wasn't letting someone else be here, dealing with your father with you. Had to come, and I knew without help I couldn't help but claim you. You want to avoid our bond so badly that you would use magic to stop it? Could he hurt her any deeper? Oh wait, you haven't even had the Benedanti check me out for magic. You don't even trust me. I don't need them to check you out, but they already did. The man on the porch when we got here wasn't a wolf. He uses magic to give off that scent. He's Benedanti and he cleared you. She sucked in a breath. No wonder he'd made her nervous. I hate you needed him to check me out more than you can know. Not me. The guard and the king. The king? She asked, appalled. Our king knows about my father? He nodded. He's Cole's father-in-law. How could he not? They'll kill my father for being a traitor. He can't be a traitor. I know, which is why I need you to understand that I want you, Carmen, as against everything male and wolf in me, to not claim you. No, it's more than want. I need you, but we both know it's me or your father, and we both know you can't live with that. And baby, I love you way too much to hurt you like that. Her chest tightened. You love me? Yes, I love you. More than you can possibly know. Tears, she hated tears, but they spilled from her eyes of their own accord. And she knew why. She knew the truth. I love you too. I do. I don't hate you. I can't hate you. He's not right, sure. I know he's not. I know. And I Don't want to lose him, but I don't want to lose you again either. Emotion overcame her, shaking her body, the tears pouring from deep in a hurtful spot inside her soul. She'd been destined to lose either Shi or her father since the day she'd lost her mother. Shi picked her up and she curled into him, welcoming his strength, his presence in her where he belonged. She glanced up at him, swiping at tears. I need you, Shi. You can't leave. Again. You can't. He sat down on a couch and settled her against the arm, her legs across his lap, gently swiping tears from her eyes. We'll find an answer. She shook her head. That's not what I want to hear. Tell me you aren't leaving again. Tell me we'll deal with my father together and everything else. From this point forward. Tell me you'll help me try to save him. She climbed on top of him, straddling him. Tell me, Shi. He wrapped his strong arms around her, laced his fingers at the back of her head, and rested his forehead against hers. I can't make a promise I can't keep. I don't know if he can be saved. She pulled back to look at him. If it's magic eating him alive, then surely magic can save him. Surely Nico has ties high enough in the Benedanti to go to someone ancient and powerful enough to save him. Just tell me we'll try. It's all I can ask, but I need you to mean it. He slid his hand to her face, brushed his lips over hers. I'd do anything for you, Carmen, but promise me you won't get your hopes up. I won't. I promise. She pressed her mouth to his. Thank you, Shi. You don't have to thank me, Carmen. Just don't hate me if it doesn't work out. I love you. I'm not going to stop loving you. Show me, he murmured, shifting her so that she could feel his shaft pressing between her thighs. Show me, Carmen. She eased forward and took him inside her, sliding down his length, feeling him fill her, her arms wrapping his neck, their lips a breath apart. How long does that mark on your hand last? Not long without more magic. A day, maybe two. He rolled her to her back, settling over her. Too long. Too long, she whispered, before his mouth closed over hers, and the desperateness of two mates afraid they would never be one drove them over the edge. Chapter 7. Damn it, Nico, this isn't the answer, Shi said, standing in the middle of the ranch's kitchen that was technically owned by the Royal Guard. Shi was just using the place until Cole replaced the warehouse he and his mate had managed to get blown up. She's not going back there. The rebels came after her. This is the best plan we have. What plan? Carmen asked, appearing in the doorway. Shi's gut tightened at the sight of her standing there, now dressed in the black jeans and t-shirt Nico's mate had sent her, her red hair a wild silky mass of just fucked many times glory that he wished wasn't about to go away. He loved this woman too damn much to watch her tormented. We don't have a plan, he said firmly, his gaze dropping to her hand where she held the folder he'd given her with evidence against her father. She held it up. If it means undoing what my father might have done, sure. Whatever it is, I have to do it. Shi cut Nico a hard look. We don't have a plan. She stared at him and then cut her gaze to Nico. You want me to go back and spy on my father? It wasn't a question. Yes, Nico agreed. Otherwise we can't be sure he'll tell us what we need to. No. You aren't going back there, Carmen, Shi said. Not after the rebels came. After you. Maybe they came after you, Shi, she suggested. They didn't. You can't know that. And if they did come after me, what does that mean? Her brows dipped. If they need me to use against my father, then my father must not be willingly helping them. Or your father somehow figured out I was coming after you and used rebel allies to try and stop me. She cut her gaze to the ceiling and swallowed hard, before looking at him again. In which case, I'm not in danger from the rebels. I can go back. You're not going back. You can't stop me. You want to bet on that? You're my mate and I'm done denying that. You aren't going back there and putting your life in danger. Sure, damn it, dash. Nico's cell phone rang and he grabbed it and punched the button. Sure, focused on Carmen. A mated male does not let his woman put herself in harm's way. We have an option, Nico announced, drawing their attention, and the air around him crackled before a rather large and clunky gold chain appeared in his hand, dangling from his fingers. Ariel pulled in some high-up favors and found a spell to slow the spread of the magic's poison in Alexander's blood. It won't cure him, but it will buy us time to try to find a way he can be. Carmen's excitement was palpable, but Shi wasn't ready to get on this. Bandwagon. He'd seen too many things in his years. What's the catch? It won't erase the changes that have already occurred. It won't keep him out of jail. What it will do is convince the king there is a chance to save him. This necklace is a lifeline. Carmen's eyes met Shi's. It's hope. That's all I can ask for. We have to get it on him now is the trick, Nico said, looking worried as. That was an issue. I'll give it to him as a gift, Carmen suggested. That won't work, Nico said, nixing that idea quickly. The magic in the necklace will react to the dark magic in his body. It's going to hurt just being near it, let alone wearing it. We can't arrest him without risking this becoming public. So we bring him to us, Shi said softly. How? Carmen asked. Shi's eyes met Nico's and the two of them knew what had to be done. Nico grabbed his phone and dialed. Council member, sir, Nico said into the phone. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Shi McKnight has kidnapped your daughter, but we're tracking him. Once we have a solid location, we'll contact you back. Nico snapped the phone shut. I'm going to check on my mate and round up the troops. He disappeared from the room, using the newfound magic his witchy mate had gifted him. You're bossy, Carmen said immediately. I won't apologize for protecting you, just for not doing it sooner. Suddenly, she darted towards him and wrapped herself around him. You aren't leaving this time, are you? He tunneled his fingers into her hair and forced her gaze to his. No, I'm not leaving this time. Promise. And this time he answered her and meant it. I promise. Good, bad, or ugly. You're stuck with me. Not yet, she whispered. Not until the damnable magic you have etched in your palm is gone. I hate magic. I hate it so much. And so did Shi. More in that moment than he thought possible, since that magic kept him from making her truly his. It was an hour later when Carmen stepped onto the front porch of the ranch house alone, the hot night suffocating her despite the recent sunset. Shi was out back in some sort of building behind the house with Cole, Nico, and Jacob, doing some sort of planning for her father's appearance. She was a wreck, so close to the chance to have both the men she loved in her life and terrified it would go wrong. A sudden chill rushed over her despite the heat, and she instinctively took a step backwards. The blonde man, the Benedanti, appeared in front of her. A second later, her father stood beside him. Her father, who had simply appeared, using magic to transport him when that should be impossible. Father, she gasped. Take her back to my quarters, he ordered the Benedanti. I'll deal with Shi once and for all. The Benedanti stepped towards her. Wait, she yelled. We're mated. Shi and I are mated. We live together and we die together. Her father's eyes turned red like a virus-infected wolf, which made no more sense than him using magic to travel. She had no idea what he was anymore, or who he was for that matter. I'm proof that isn't true, he said. And don't think I'm not prepared to make sure it's not true for you either. You want me, here I am, Shi said from behind her, and she jumped when a gun went off. The Benedanti trader collapsed to the ground, dead far easier than she thought one of their kind could die. Suddenly, she stood between her mate and her father, the one thing that separated the two wolves she loved the most in this world. Her father cried out and dropped to his knees. Carmen whirled around and found Shi holding the necklace. Frantically she looked between the two men. Her father gasped and held his throat. Carmen, Carmen, he croaked. Shi started towards her father and she launched herself at Shi. Stop! Stop! You're killing him. Shi shackled her around the waist and tried to set her aside, but it was too late. She felt the air shift and change. She knew her father had just disappeared. Oh God, what have I done? She turned in Shi's arms to confirm. Her father was gone, and then turned back to Shi. I panicked. I didn't want him to die. I know, Shi said calmly. It's okay. We'll find him. The air shifted again and a roar filled the air. Carmen whirled around to find her father shifting to wolf. Shi shoved her aside and to her horror watched him shift and launch himself at her father, and she knew this was a fight to the death. And that was when all hell broke loose. Suddenly rebel wolves charged from around the perimeters. The ranch was under attack. All around Carmen there were wolves fighting, but she stood on that porch, frozen, unable to move, until one of those wolves launched himself her direction, operating on pure instinct, not even aware she knew it was there. Carmen picked up the gun Shi had dropped when he shifted and landed a bullet in between her attacker's eyes. It dropped like a rock and she reached down and grabbed the necklace and a second gun, realizing right then what she had to do. She was going to shoot her father and her mate. How else was she going to stop them from killing each other? Shi felt the bullet to his shoulder a moment before he heard Alexander's roar of pain, and Shi rolled and began to shift, knowing he'd heal instantly. Alexander did the same thing. The gun went off again and Shi focused off. The crush of bones and bite of the bullet, his body was grinding past skin to gape in disbelief. Carmen was not only holding the gun, but he was pretty sure she put the bullet in him, but she just shot her father with another one. Alexander roared again and started to shake, shifting with obvious pain. Carmen dropped to her knees beside him, and fear pushed Shi towards her, crawling in desperateness to get to her before his shift was complete. He didn't know what Alexander was capable of, and he didn't want to find out at the expense of Carmen. She reached down towards Alexander and he caught the flash of the necklace a second before Alexander sat up, grabbed Carmen by the hair. The necklace dropped to the ground. Shi was there in an instant, snatching the chain and maneuvering so that he was slamming it against Alexander's chest, trying to free Carmen. The wolf roared and let go of Carmen, and the necklace burned into his skin, seeming to crawl like a snake through his flesh and wrap his neck on its own. Alexander screamed in pain and Carmen screamed with him. Shi grabbed her and held her while she pressed her face to his shoulder. Seconds that felt like hours passed until the screams stopped. Alexander went completely still, and Shi feared he was dead, that Carmen had lost her father and she would blame him, that in the end magic would destroy them all. 1 week later, Chapter 8. With a blanket wrapped around her, and wearing one of Shi's t-shirts, Carmen sat on a thick rug in front of a fireplace, watching the flames leap and jump. When only days before, she'd been in sunshine and heat. The cold days and nights were a shock to her system after Vegas, but unavoidable considering the underground Alaska facility was the Benedantes' secret headquarters. To the world of the society, her father was on special assignment at the Benedantes' training facility. To Carmen, he was a stranger she hoped would become her father again, not the stranger who stared blankly at the walls, but he was alive, and the Benedanti had given her hope that they could save him, and that was what mattered. Carmen smiled as Shi joined her, wrapping himself around her from behind and holding a cup of hot chocolate to her lips. She sipped the warm, yummy beverage. She was pretty sure he was naked, just the way she liked him. "You do know how to win a girl's heart." "Do I?" he asked, nuzzling her hair. "You do," she said, her stomach fluttering with a mix of arousal and emotion. He'd been there for her every step of the way with her father, just as he had when she'd lost her mother. This place felt more like home than the society had in a very long time, and she knew it was because Shi was here. Didn't hurt that she and Alia, Nico's mate, had become fast friends either, and that they had been given an open invitation to stay as long as they wished. "So you say I know how to win a woman's heart," Shi said, setting the cup aside. "Enough to make this thing between us forever?" She sucked in a breath, knowing what he was telling her, and grabbing his hand. Her eyes prickled with the absence of the magic mark that had kept them from mating. She twisted in his arms. We can dash." "Yeah, we can. And by choice." He slid his hand into her hair. "I choose you. For the rest of my life. The question is, do you choose me?" Carmen leaned back and pulled his shirt over her head, but his eyes held hers as he leaned against the table behind him and pulled her on him. "I choose you," she whispered, too emotional to find her voice fully, and when he was buried deep inside her, filling her as he had her life, kissing her with so much passion that he both stole her breath and gave her the next breath she took at the same time, she knew she'd found her forever. A long time later, she lay on her side in front of him, the fire crackling and burning in front of them. Carmen stared sleepily down at the crescent moon on her palm before she started to drift to sleep. Just when her lashes were heavy, when the room began to fade, Shi's cell phone started to ring and a knock sounded on the door. Carmen jerked to a sitting position and Shi sat up and grabbed the phone. On edge, Carmen waited to hear what came next, afraid it was about her father. Relieved when Shi ended the call with a wolfish grin. "Alia's finally in labor. She's asking for you." He chuckled. And according to the nurse, Nico isn't the calm leader we all know and trust. He's freaking out and making them all crazy. Carmen grinned and jumped to her feet with excitement. A new baby. A new magical baby. Maybe, just maybe, magic wasn't all bad. In fact, in this case, knowing how in love Nico and Alia were, she had to believe it was the beginning of something very special. This was the first baby born part wolf and part Benedanti in centuries. That had to be special. Epilogue. Darkness. There was darkness everywhere. Alexander could feel nothing but the weight of it suffocating him. Alexander. He froze at the soft feminine voice that hummed along his nerve endings. Alexander. An image of a beautiful blonde filled his mind, wiping away the darkness. The pain eased, his limbs warmed. Peace. He felt peace. He could sleep. Alexander. 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 He jerked and felt adrenaline race through his veins. He knew the voice. He knew this woman. Yes, the beautiful blonde. Her name. What was her name? A coppery taste filled his mouth, bled into his taste buds, and her image came to him again. She was kissing him, leaning over him, and he wanted to touch her, but he couldn't seem to move. And there was blood on her lips, on his lips. She was his worst enemy. She was the very thing that had stripped his world away and ruined his life. She was a vampire. With an intake of breath, Alexander sat up, his gaze wildly taking in the sterile hospital room he lay in. He reached up and wiped his mouth and then looked at his hand. There was blood on it. He growled low in his throat and swung his legs off the bed. He was hunting a vampire, and her name was Isabel.